I'd like to call this meeting of the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kraus?
Here.
Dr. Chesney?
Here.
Mr. Stahl?
Here.
Mrs. Minor? Here. Mr. Trombley?
Here.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Birchfield?
Next item up is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
A motion with support.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0-1 absent. This brings us to the point of the meeting where we do call the public. It's an opportunity for you to address the Board of Education with any issues you may have. If you'd like to, please come up to the podium, state your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Dr. Chesney has a couple of papers. There'll be a warning. We have 30 seconds left with a yellow sign and then a red sign. 3 minutes up.
Hi, Arnella Park, Brighton High School leadership teacher. I'm here tonight to, well, I guess I'm the student rep tonight. I'm a little old for that job, but I would like to report out on Pink Week. Pink Week was a huge success. We're all pretty exhausted, but we reached our goal of $10,000, and we haven't totaled up all of the money, but I think that we even surpassed that goal. So that $10,000 has been pledged to the St. Joseph Woodland Cancer Center, and the extra funds will go to the Susan B. Komen Foundation. Susan G. Coleman. I always say Susan B. I would like to make sure that we really thank our awesome community for all of their support. The downtown looked fantastic. Our staff contributed so many items to the Pick Your Prize raffles, from oil changes and tire rotations from the auto body class to deer and doe hunting with our principal, to golfing with Mr. Vecchione, athletic passes, and I could go on and on and on. But that Choose Your Prize raffle alone raises over $2,000. I would like to also thank Mr. Gavin Johnson, this was his vision, and he has dragged me along kicking and screaming, and every year his vision grows and grows. But we do have a good time together at every evening event where we're just working hard to make sure that it's a success. But we couldn't do it without the committed students in the leadership class. Keep in mind that this was the 3rd week of school. These students were new to us on September 9th, and they just jumped right in full force and pulled off an amazing week. The next thing coming up, I think we have a week to breathe. Just about a week, that's it. And then homecoming starts, and our homecoming theme this year is Empire State of Mind, kind of a New York City theme. The assembly is Friday, October 9th at 1:20. We'd love it if you could come and see our student body in action. I don't think that there is another assembly in our county, maybe even our state, that is so inspiring as our Brighton High School pep assemblies. And finally, the parade's coming up. I've heard from a few of you, but I still need to have a few RSVPs so we can work on your signs. And on the day of the parade, if I am hollering at you, no gaps, please make sure we keep those cars tight. Otherwise, kids flow out on the streets and it starts to get dangerous. I would like to also ask for you to reconsider your decision, the decision of former board members to limit the leadership students from sitting at the board table for every meeting, and now they're only limited to once a month. Once a month, you miss a lot of details, like you would have missed these important details tonight if I hadn't come to inform you what's happening at Brighton High School. It's a body of 2,200 students, and I admit sometimes my female leadership girls can get a little vocal and have a few opinions, but Gavin says he likes women like that. I think that's why we get along so well. I'm full of my opinions. And so I would like you to, once again, see my leadership students sitting at this board table for every meeting. If that's possible, let us know, and they'll be glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ronald. Would anybody else like to address the board this evening? I see none. That ends our first call to the public. Now we head into superintendent report.
I don't have letter A, but I'll introduce it. It's the formation of a BAS Math and Science Center, and I probably would kick it to Dr. Chesney or Dr.
Sorry, you
Suri.
kicked it over here to me.
Yeah.
As you know, the board has asked for some presentations as they're imagining and envisioning the direction for our instructional programs here in the district, and the first one they've asked for is a presentation on a math and science center, the possibility of creating one here. And we're just at the point where we're learning about what that is, but it's kind of a very interesting idea, I think. And Dr. Chesney put us in touch with Jim Meyer, who is the former dean of Utica Community Schools, and retired, I believe, now. And he actually launched the Math and Science Center there for Utica Schools. And he's going to share his experiences with us a little bit here tonight. We've also, just in case they chime in, we have Gavin Johnson here from the high school, and I know he has some experience in building a math and a science center in his former district. We also have Kim Hubert here, who is our mathematics coach. And so I think I'll turn this over to Mr. Meyer at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Suri. Appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you folks. It's been a passionate adventure for me being part of the Utica Math Science Center, and so having an opportunity to share our experience with you folks this evening, and hopefully it'll give you enough background, or at least initial background, so you can make some informed decisions on what direction you want to go to. Now, I was told that I have 15 minutes to babble forth, and I've got my stopwatch. I was also told that after 15 minutes that the microphone goes dead and the music comes on. I mean, that happened to me at the Academy Awards, and it was frankly embarrassing. So, we'll start out with what I want to share with you tonight is, first of all, the structure of the Utica Community Schools Math Science Center. I want to go into the strengths of the program, what we did that was tremendously successful. I'm going to talk about the challenges that we face, because anytime you get on to a new adventure like we did, there are all kinds of challenges and they're ongoing. And finally, the things that didn't work, things that we had all the best intentions of the world but didn't work out. Now, one of the advantages that we had with the Utica Community Schools, I don't know how much familiarity you have with that school district. It is the second largest in Michigan with 29,000 students. So because of that, we were able to do everything in-house. Many schools like ours throughout the state are consortium schools that involve a variety of surrounding school districts. So it was a real advantage for us in having commonality with all our feeding schools, with grading systems, with schedules, all that kind of stuff really worked well for us. Our structure was very basic. We had, it's a pull-out program where the students were bused to us from their home high schools on a daily basis. We had our 9th and 12th graders in the morning. We had our 10th and 11th in the afternoon, and each session was basically 3 classes. Bus them in, 3 classes, and off they go. And it's really a simplification on how our daily schedule was structured, but I'll get into that a little bit as time goes on. We started out at Utica High School. They housed us, and we had dedicated classrooms just for our program. After 3 years, the district built a terrific facility standalone for us, and invested a great deal of time, money, and thought in providing our students with an incredible facility that fostered the experience that they had. We had 60 students per grade. Now, that has changed since I retired, but 60 students per grade for a total of around 240. We had our own admissions process where we would test approximately 300 kids a year. And the kids all came out of either a gifted program or they were in an accelerated math program. And of those 300, we picked the top 60. We also looked at their 8th grade grades and designed ultimately our own test. Our staff was so incredible in being able to kind of form a matrix in terms of what would spell success for our kids. We got to the point where we could almost predict which kids would make it, which kids would fall by the wayside, based on what we saw when they came in. Got very good at it. Staff, there were 8 teachers and me. We were it. The staff was selected for several reasons. One is they were absolutely top-notch in their academic expertise, in their discipline. The second component, which I think ultimately was as critical as anything, was their understanding the nature of the gifted child. Because clearly we had incredible kids there and they bring their own sets of circumstances with them. And the last thing is they needed to be team players. The teachers that I inherited at the program, I had worked with, I think, 5 of the 8 prior, and I have to say that each one of them, they had their own kingdoms in their home schools. And they ruled their discipline. So when they came, I owe you. Put my hands in my pocket and work out there. But they really had to be team players. Without that, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, a lot of people, when they came to look at our MST, they looked at the curriculum and they would marvel at the kind of things that our kids were able to do. But I kept repeating the thing that was most critical to our program, I'm sure this is echoed with others, was the staff. The staff was absolutely critical, and they were terrific. They were absolutely terrific. The strengths of the program. Number one thing is we had total commitment from our school board. Every week they would call me and say, Jim, what do you need? What do you need? And there was a time, of course, back then, those salad days where the finances are different from what they were now, but the attitude was there. That, what can we provide you with? What can we do to enable this program to be successful? The kind of kids that we had at MST, I call them high risk because there was so much at stake with these kids. They're absolute high-flying, high-achieving, potential to be high achievers, and so to provide them with the means to have them be successful was absolutely necessary. The board was terrific. And I can say even like in 2008 when the economy went down and all of us in Michigan, since then have been struggling with finances, the board was still committed to make sure that program sustained its quality, figured out very creative ways of being able to still deliver what we needed to deliver. The curriculum, it was unique. And that's one of the things about MST that could not be replicated in any fashion whatsoever in a traditional high school. Math, science, and computer science. Sounds pretty darn basic, but it wasn't. The curriculum was seamless. And by this I mean, we developed a matrix. And what I did is I contacted a whole host of highly selective colleges throughout the country and essentially said, what do you want your kids to look like? And so, we made careful notes on whether it was engineering or biochemistry, whatever it might be, what skill set do you want the kids to have? So we worked backwards. And math, for example, we did not have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade math. We had math. If there were, let's say, over 4 years, 20 different topics that they wanted to teach, we would sit down and say, okay, where do these fit in? So wherever they stopped in 9th grade, boom, they'd start again in 10th grade, start in 11th grade. So it was absolutely seamless. All the components that we felt were necessary, MIT or Caltech or whatever I thought were necessary, we were able to slot them in where we thought that the continuity was there. And the other thing is all the math teachers, for example, would work together, always to make sure that if we're teaching Calc 2 at the senior level, what had to be part of their toolbox, what had to be there. So we were able to put everything, same thing with the sciences. All the classes were taught at a college level, and we did put the AP designation on our classes, even though we did not follow the AP curriculum. Our teachers were very schooled in the nature of AP, so they made sure that our kids were prepared. And they took the AP test, 100% of our kids passed all the AP tests, and our average was like a 4.5. So the results were there. Our teachers were so skilled in making sure that those kids were prepared to do AP. We were integrated. No matter how much we talk about, I was in conventional high school for a long time, no matter how many times you talk about, let's integrate stuff. We were able to do that. The staff would sit down, for example, our physics teacher would say to the math teacher, here's what they have to know for next week, because they're doing this body of experiments. And so we integrated all the time. What technology did they have to know? So our Java and C++ teacher, he would say, here is a skill set that they are prepared to bring to this class, to that class. So we truly were integrated from the very beginning. One of the strengths of our program is the fact that we met as a staff at least 2 times a week, every week for all the time that I was there. And in doing so, we were able to do planning all the time, doing planning. And we did what was probably in the profession called a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, constantly to our program, every week to see what's working, what isn't working. And again, to have a staff that's part of a team that does problem solving, you just imagine what results from all that. We had a high degree of academic autonomy that, again, the board said, what are you doing? And we tell them. They did not tell us what to do. Did not tell us how to conduct our business. If we jumped the rails, they would say, So we were very keyed in to, again, designing a matrix for our students and then following that matrix, and then we would change it. We found some things that didn't work. For example, one of the things in geometry, couldn't fit geometry in, and the teachers felt, okay, what kinds of geometry things are these kids going to need? And they were able to fit them in from time to time. And that's the kind of autonomy that we had. We did not, like I said, did not have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade per se. Another example of that is our sophomores started their physics, their junior year of physics, with 2 months to go in the school year as sophomores. So we didn't just finish chemistry, wait till next fall and start physics. We started physics because our juniors were doing their internships, which is the next thing. We had one of the finest programs, I sound like I'm bragging here, with 4 minutes to go. All our juniors were involved in internships. After they took their AP tests in the beginning of May, they all did internships. Doing research at Henry Ford Hospital, working for Fanuc Robotics, doing all kinds of stuff. 100% of them for 5 weeks. And it enabled us to, sophomores, put them in physics, and it was a life-changing experience for our kids to have these internships. And they, like I said, the State Department of Education recognized that. We had some unique courses, design of experiments, which very unconventional, multivariable research. They had research elements in every class. We worked real hard at creating a social culture at MST. One of our biggest challenges is when you take a bunch of high-achieving kids, many of them were not comfortable in a normal social environment. And we worked tirelessly in creating an environment where it was okay to be smart. It was okay to be a non-traditional student. And dare I say, since nobody's paying me anymore, nerds. We have them. You have them. And these kids found a home that was non-judgmental, and it was one of the real capstones for that program. Well, these kids found a comfort level that was non-judgmental, accepting, and supportive of those kids. Absolutely critical. Our parent involvement was superior. When our kids were going into this high-risk academic situation, we wanted to make sure that high risk became low risk. We would work with those kids daily. Our school started a half hour after the conventional high school, so we had parent meetings ongoing with the entire staff, so that whatever student we had was having difficulty, they were able to sit down with me and 3 of their teachers, and we designed what we called a plan for success. Always positive, plan for success. Not how are we going to weed this kid out. There were no threats. It's like, how can we find success for you? What are the things that you're willing to do and then we're willing to do? We also created our own social environment. Had to. We wanted to make this as challenging as this place was, we wanted to make it fun. So we had all kinds of stuff, from publications to movie nights. We had a very active robotics program, and the first robotics program, they were national champions over and over and over again. It was a great place for the kids to be. Quickly, challenges and our responses. High stress environment, that was a tough one. And when you've dealt with kids like that, you know what that's all about. They're crawling over each other. Part of the problem with the staff, and this is what my job was, is say, staff, settle down. Because they would see the capacity for these kids, and I was like, wow, they can do this, well, let's add that. And when you have, 8 teachers all striving to do that, it's like, no. Taper it off. High stress. Compulsiveness and underachieving. Comes with the territory as well, with high achieving kids. But we were able to be proactive with that and always had a plan to deal with that. GPA, grade obsession, comes with the territory. But again, since we had these kids from 9th grade on, we were able to say, okay, here's what it really means. Here's how this plays out in the real world. Here are the answers. Part of my job is to say, here are the rules of the road. Here's what these GPAs mean outside in the real world. And fortunately, the parents and kids trusted us, but it was an ongoing problem. I know when I met with the deans of Harvard and Penn and Yale and several others, they said, you're grading too hard. So I went back to the staff and said, we got to rethink this. And we came up with plans to deal with every one of these kinds of issues. Challenges, we had a no dropout policy. That was dictated to us by central office. And so we had to keep them. And it was tough because some kids would torpedo their own work just to get out of there. So again, we developed some strategies on how to deal with that. Also, one of the challenges was our relationship with the home schools. Oh, you're taking all the good kids, leaving us with what? Yeah, other good kids. But it was a challenge, and we did a great deal of networking with, again, for us, we had 4 high schools and 7 junior highs to make sure that we had a positive network and that those folks were always in our corner and always suggesting that their kids look at MST for their future. But it was always a challenge. Also, logistically, it was difficult for kids being out of their home schools for half a day. So things like homecoming and sports, band, and so forth. And here's where central office was so critical for us. They would go back to the 4 high schools and say, here's how we would like for you to do scheduling, master scheduling, so that kids could be in band and be MSD students. And I had been a coach for many years. Dave Chesney's story, but we'll save that for later. But the central office was really good in encouraging home schools to accommodate MSD kids. Elitism. I just talked to one of my former students and his daughter last night, and sometimes his kids would go back to their home schools and this. Our instruction was proud, but never haughty, never boastful. And we worked at it all the time because we're working so hard to make relationships with the home schools. You can't have the kids going back and, misbehaving. Things that didn't work. The no dropout policy didn't work. So finally, the central office saw that if we followed a certain protocol to try to enable kids to be successful and it still didn't work, then we'd say, we've got to part ways here because we're not doing justice to the child. So our motto always is, what's best for kids? What's best for kids? In all our meetings, it was what's best for kids. Our research hour couldn't do it because every time you added something, you had to drop something off. The research hour didn't work, so we found a way to work with that. Increasing our female enrollment. Well, that was a tough one. Still, part of our problem was we started to identify how to work with that, and then I quit. So, Keeping the hardware current, that stuff costs money. And it was an ongoing struggle to try to keep the technology and maintaining funding. Microphone didn't go off, but the kind of opportunities we generated for those kids is beyond belief. It was more than we had ever imagined. We're taking a segment of the student population that was basically unattended. Kids, the assumption was, smart kids, they can pretty much take care of themselves. That's another hour's worth from me on why that doesn't happen. So to be able to take that group of kids and allow them to be incredibly successful, more than they would for the reasons that I just gave, but the kinds of things that we saw as a result, we were surprised by one thing. We knew they were going to be successful high school students, send them off with this unique skill set. But when we did a longitudinal study of how the college thing turned out, we were blown away. They had already done the hard thing. They'd already faced failure. They'd already faced those kinds of academic challenges that the rest of the population wasn't going to face for some time. And their ability to handle that, to do research, because I can't tell you the stories. Well, one of them was Dr. Chesney's University of Michigan. We sent kids there that had so much experience in doing research components, they would leapfrog right over other freshmen in being able to do that kind of stuff. So our goal was to create advantages and opportunities for those kids they wouldn't get in a traditional setting, and it worked beyond anything that we'd ever imagined. I'll be staying later in case anybody has any questions. I also hear confessions, I give autographs or whatever. Again, thank you so much for your time, and I apologize for being 4 minutes over.
Thank you. It's just a question. There are just a couple of questions before going, and this is towards Mr. Johnson. Do you have anything to add or any contrast with Romeo Public Schools?
No, just, the consortium of schools is interesting because that could be a school choice drug.
And so consortium being that the Math and Science Center would possibly be at Brighton High School, but other schools within Livingston County might be drawn to it because
That's just an idea I wrote down as a pro.
Okay.
Kind of like our career and tech ed courses we share.
Okay.
That's one positive. And then the negatives are scheduling. Michigan Merit curriculum is different now than it was when I worked with that. Kids lose an elective.
Right.
So that if you're a band and a foreign language kid, it's really hard to do Michigan Merit curriculum and a Math Science Center and all these things. So there's some pros and cons with Michigan Merit curriculum nowadays. And Laura's nodding her head because she understands what that means. But I think there's pros and cons with it.
Okay.
If you're in a single high school district, much tougher to pull off with the numbers, but not impossible.
Okay. And Mr. Meyer, the
He's giving autographs.
okay, he's giving autographs. But if I could, Mr. Meyer, if I could get your attention just for a second.
I'm giving autographs.
Where did you come up with the model and the formation of this? I mean, did you create it out of the ether, or were you following another model that came before, or where did it come from?
As valuable as ether is, there are schools like us throughout the country, and there's a national consortium, and we did a great deal of research in looking at a variety of schools like ours, and so we attempted to take the best of what we could discern from other schools and those that would best fit our student population. So they were out there before us. That was a great resource for us.
Thank you.
Just want to thank Jim for sharing with us this evening, and maybe you'd be willing to come back. We'll be beginning a curriculum subcommittee for the board and looking more closely at initiatives like this. And so thank you for sharing with us, and probably be in touch later on for more information also from Gavin and his experience. Thank you.
Next, as part of our presentation schedule that the board asked us to do, we're going to start tonight with technology and Dr. Turner.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Hold on while I try and orient my technology here. Maybe I need some help or guesting as you offered. So I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to present and be the first one to go ahead and set a high standard. Just like Dr. Gray has said before, how can I deprive people of this? So I get to have the floor, and I might run over too, but this is a hard act to follow. He had all the jokes. So tonight we're going to talk about what's been accomplished sort of since I've taken the position in 2013 up till now, and then we'll talk about what's the future holds, if you don't mind. And this is our agenda here. So obviously I'm Chris Turner, and I love to do presentations, so thank you. I'm a little bit active on Twitter, so if you are interested in education issues or boring old technology issues, you can find me at Chris Turner EDD. What I'd like to start off with is sort of the departments and my own personal orientation. I come from the classroom. I feel blessed to be in this position because I feel like I use a lot of my background. So I was a 15-year librarian and a 3-year classroom teacher, and I know the frustrations that can result when the tools that you rely on as a teacher might not work. So I try and carry on with the process that Elson established when Brighton area schools went through the bond process. He utilized a lot of committee work and a lot of people's input in terms of the tools and the ultimate shape of how the district would look technology-wise. And so I've tried to carry on with that because I know that's important. And also, I think that we're very collaborative. We're a collaborative district, we're a collaborative department, and I mean that in the sense that we don't, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in terms of the tools that we use, but we're a collaborative department in that we're trying to get away from siloing information. We don't want one person to be expert in an area and then be without that person and not be able to function. And beyond our own department, we're also collaborative in the county and statewide. So we have the My Google conference coming up in about 5 weeks. But particularly useful to us in our department is the monthly county meetings that we attend as a technology department. We do a lot of collaborating with the 4 other schools in the county. An example of that would be 2 months ago when we processed 423 Chromebooks in less than a day. We used 2 people from Fowlerville and some people from our department. And in years past, we've used people's volunteer help before as well. And it's been very helpful. So some of our initiatives over the last 2 years, primarily at the top, this received the warmest reception from the users. We formerly had a shared internet connection among all the buildings here and all the teachers that was 100 megabits per second from AT&T. And a new product came out, and it only cost us about a quarter or a third more, but it increased our speed by tenfold. We went from 100 megabits per second, which is about 2 to 4 times faster than your home connection. If you have broadband at home, what we were using 2 years ago was about 2 to 4 times as fast as your home connection. So that's completely unacceptable when you think about all the network services that we were providing. So we were able to increase our speed tenfold. Now we're up to 1,000 megabits per second or 1 gigabit per second. And we're constantly reevaluating that because we know Howell, which is a slightly larger district than ours, their tech director has 3 gigabit per second. So it's not really an arms race. We're not in this to be the fastest or have the largest bandwidth, but we also need to be able to serve our users. So our users demand access to tools like YouTube in the classroom because it's very curricularly appropriate, and we'd like to provide that for them. So internet connection was huge. That came about in the summer of 2014. Spring of 2015, this year, we finally completed what I'll call our wide area network. All 10 buildings in Brighton area schools are now part of our network. What we did was we had to lease 2 copper antiquated lines to connect the transportation building to our district network. And I talked about speeds before. These connections were 1.54 megabits per second, probably like what you got off of your first cell phone back 6, 7 years ago, your first smartphone. And we leased 2 of those, and it cost us $600 a month, $300 a piece. And so what we did was we invested in bringing private fiber out to the transportation building, and we were able to complete our network, and now they can use all the resource-rich network tools that the rest of the district enjoys. So we've got them fully using photocopying and printing and all the network services. All the cameras were operational, but we've we've really emphasized security and network services. And the phones, there's no more drop calls because the phones were going through this very narrow pipe. So we're very pleased with that development. Some other initiatives. I know that the Wi-Fi access points, there's 2 of them in the room here. I know they predate my existence here, so I shouldn't really talk about them, but they're germane because we have at any one moment here in the district 1,800 users on our Wi-Fi access points. So that's tremendous. That's a huge amount of bandwidth and usage. So if you consider that students with smart devices that come to school, which is getting younger and younger, even reaching down into elementary schools, they're taking up 1 license, and then every device is taking up a license. So if we have a classroom full of Chromebooks, 35 of them, the teacher with their laptop, and all of those students and the teacher with their wireless devices, we're talking about 70, 75 licenses taken up. And these access points can take up to 125 connections at a time. So we're kind of pushing capacity. I think it's interesting. 1,800 users at one time and 4,200 unique users throughout the day. I think it's a tremendous asset. People that use the district facilities for, let's say you're waiting, I use the example all the time. If you're waiting with your son or daughter while they practice in the swimming pool or in the gymnasium and you're not a member of the staff, you can use our guest Wi-Fi. It's a tremendous asset. You can be, I don't know, you update your Facebook status, but of course you're doing work while you're here, right? So moving on to the short-tail telephones, that was another 2014 initiative. We moved to telephones that didn't use the old copper wire technology. We now use what's called voice over IP technology. We have the short-tail server that lives upstairs in the tech room. All the connections go through a normal connection, a PRI, to the servers. And then the voicemail is all operated upstairs. It's a very administratively efficient system. We can plug and play phones within a building, and then we can reorient phones to all new users or people that change rooms or change buildings. It's very, very efficient. We're very happy with the system so far as we grow with its functionality. iPads, I put up there an imprecise number. Summer of 2014, we processed in one day 795 iPads with the help of volunteers like Lynette Dagg, who also helped us with our recent Chromebook deployment. Thank you, Lynette. We did nearly 800 iPads in one day with volunteer help. And I know that we did 795 that day. I know we probably have between 900 and 1,000 iPads now, because I know there was pilots and other carts of iPads throughout the district. That's a very popular tool, especially at the K2 level. Moving on though, the biggest asset, I think the most favored technology device now may be both from the technology department and from the end users might be Chromebooks. And I have a precise number on that, 2,171 Chromebooks used in the district, because we license them and they're enrolled in our system. And so we know through our administrative panel how many licenses are being used by those devices at any one time. Chromebooks are terrific. We've bought a tremendous amount of Chromebooks over the last 2 summers. Their advantages are they're very, very affordable. Last year's Chromebook that we bought, the Dell version, was $262 per device, and this year's Dell device, which is a much improved version 2, was only $214 per device. The batteries last anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. They're not indestructible, of course, but they're very, very durable, especially the new device. Another initiative that took place this summer with Dr. Gistinger's assistance and the yeoman-like work of Colleen Krieg over at the high school, we took our MyStar online gradebook and attendance program and we integrated a sort of school store feature. All parents through Parent Connect were able to add funds to their students' lunch account, and now what you can do is you can make payments for items like a yearbook. Gavin and I have talked about integrating prom tickets, but we know that won't work because we've got some logistical issues. But, you know, Mrs. Park and her leadership class could sell t-shirts and we could account for it in MyStar. You could pay for it. Parents could log on anytime, day or night, add money to their student's account. There's a whole store set up so you can make payments, and it's even rolling down further to the middle schools, to both Scranton and Maltby, because of the Cedar Point trips and the Washington, D.C. trips. We can make the payments there, collect all the money there. It makes the disparate sort of systems that we had before we're consolidating our systems. We had too many. We had Pay Schools and Pay For It and PayPal and MyStar, and we wanted to try and lessen all of those systems as much as possible. One of our 2014 initiatives was what the product is called Safari Montage. It's a whole rack of servers that sits up in the tech room in the MDF. It's a large storage device. It delivers video content that is state approved curricularly. It meets all the standards that the state requires of us. So a teacher, for example, let's say a science teacher is looking for information that can supplement their curriculum. So we're, as exciting as I am, I know I'm not the greatest lecturer perhaps, or I can't hold 60 or 70 minutes of attention. So I look up, let's say I'm a science teacher, I look up information on biomes. I talk about biomes for 30 minutes. I show them a 10-minute multimedia piece, a video on biomes, and then I hand out the homework and I work with them on a one-to-one basis. That's what Safari does for us. It provides us 6,000 to 8,000 video titles. It's a tremendous resource. We bought the system, we've licensed the content, and it's only been very, very popular so far with the teachers. The other tool that we can use it for is we can create our own content and we can upload it to our Safari system, and it's all locally available on our network and outside of our network. So another example, my other for instance is, I'm teaching that science, that content area on biomes. I want to flip my classroom. I want the students to be able to see the content perhaps the night before, and then we'll work on the homework the next day in class. We can do that. We can upload I can videotape my lesson as I'm up there, working with my whiteboard and all of my examples. I can videotape it, upload it to Safari, and I can push it out to each of my students, and they can access that. I think it's really advantageous, not necessarily for a flipped classroom situation, but if we have a student that's out, you call in sick, right? You're sick for a day or 3 days. You can videotape your lesson, load it to Safari, and send it out to the student, and they're not that far behind. Another initiative I brought with me from Grand Ledge. I know Fowlerville is heavily invested in this system. It's quite self-descriptive there. The title is actually Web Help Desk. And so it's a tool that is web-driven. And it serves two very important functions for us. Primarily, we didn't have any inventory control. We had a range of spreadsheets and asset tags under Elson's old Google account. And so what we've done is we've bought something, we purchased this tool that we don't have to subscribe to. We bought it, we own it, and we can inventory all of our assets. And all of our assets are tagged, and then they're oriented to each user. So if Dr. Suri submits a ticket that she needs help with her asset, I know instantly by looking in Web Help Desk that she has a MacBook Pro, and I can go over there and I know what tools I might need to help her with her problem. So it's an inventory tool, but I already alluded to the fact that it's a ticketing tool too. We haven't fully rolled this function out yet. The library media specialists are using it. We use it quite thoroughly. We've had 150 tickets since about August 28th until now. And so the ticketing system is much like School Dude is used in the maintenance and operations department, where there is a need for an installation of a printer or a television doesn't work or whatever the case may be that's technology related, we can support that. And the advantage of using Web Help Desk is we don't just purchase things to purchase them. We're trying to make ourselves a lot more efficient. So I can look at Help Desk and I know that one of my technicians happens to be at Horning Elementary. I have a ticket come in that's also from Horning. I can assign it to that particular technician, and logistically, we can solve a couple of problems while he's there. It makes a lot of sense. The other advantage it gives for me is I talked earlier about siloing information and how we don't want experts, but I do know the people in my department that are especially skilled. And so if I have a very narrow request for something that only one of our people is very, very good at, I know to assign the ticket thusly. So, and then finally, this is our big initiative this summer, Active Directory. We moved to a new network operating system. Now all the people, all the computer users credential their way into the network using Active Directory. So it provides directory services and it also drives our network. We moved off of something that's open source and free. This is a paid for product, but we think that the trade-off is we'll be a lot more efficient because it will allow us to do a number of things much more efficiently. So I can, from my workstation, I can help Ms. Park in her classroom. I can remote control her computer. You can look forward to that. All of a sudden your mouse will move, Mrs. Park, and you won't know why. But she'll say, I need this printer installed, or I need this software installed, or I need this credential to download this piece of software. I no longer, or my team no longer needs to go straight to her desk. We can remote in, and we can take over the computer, and it's much more efficient that way. Finally, what it does, Active Directory, it serves a couple of functions for us. Another tool that we had that was open source was our imaging program. Imaging is where we place a computer in a spot, we hook it up to the network, and we orient that computer, we rewrite it in essence, and we orient it to our network and our services. So it knows which printers to print to, what our network operating system is, how we credential into the computer. So it serves a lot of functions for us. We think it's going to make us a lot more efficient. We have a very finite department, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So now a little personal touch. This summer we had, I was helping out with some professional development that was going on in Hawkins. The guys were out working on the Active Directory deployment. We had to touch 6,000 devices in the district. Every single computer needed to be touched, but one particular teacher thought she lost her files, and that can be scary. So she sent me this email. It was very pleasing to me because we're not in it to get patted on the back, or else we would have quit a long time ago. But it's also nice to know that people pay attention to the personal touch that you try and give everybody. The problem is, so there's the urban legend that there's a lot of words for snow in the Inuit language, right? So people that live up above the Arctic Circle, they have a range of different words for the word snow. And so I'm trying to come up with a new word for the word busy, because we're all very busy. So we were very engaged all summer long, and paying attention to this user's personal problem with her computer was very meaningful for her, and I'm glad to provide assistance. So moving on, Dr. Gray was very forward about not only placing tools in the people's hands, but also providing training. We can't have them illiterate on the tools in which they were provided. We've given them a whole suite of applications, from the Promethean boards, interactive projectors, to the devices they use, the document cameras. And so they required a tremendous investment in training. And we've done that both with Tracy Richards, who we employ through LESA, and Courtney Lauer, who we employ through Barton Mallow. They collaborate terrifically. And so what they do is they host both professional development sessions in the summer, both in June and August, but also they do sort of semi-formal sessions during the school year. The summer sessions are uncompensated, that's on their own time. And they're attended by people throughout the county. The word has gotten out how great they are, and those are the sessions that I jump in on and help out when I can. But they cover those topics, and they do a terrific job. The raves from their work are thorough, and Dr. Suri knows that well. So we can't always talk about devices, because what we're here for is the student engagement piece. So Maltby Intermediate School has a project on gravity cars, and I love it when a teacher knows that I used to be a classroom teacher, and I get invited to the classroom to see how they're using technology to supplement their curriculum, or maybe engage the students more, or maybe both. And so Barb Emery over at Maltby invited me over to witness the final product of the gravity car, and you can just see the engagement in everybody's faces. Everybody's excited, they love the project. It gets them out of the classroom, it breaks up the routine, and you know that a lot of learning took place during this whole project. And I was very glad for the invitation, and I put that out there that Dr. Suri and Dr. Gistinger and I both are committed to visiting more buildings. Isn't that correct?
Really cute girl on the end.
I think I know her. I think that's somebody I know.
It's your daughter.
Yeah, that's right. Did you have to point that out? No, I just went to that class because I was invited. So moving forward, some of our challenges and objectives, some of the goals that we have for ourselves. I've talked about efficiency over and over. We have 3 full-time employees in the department that, listen, we have pupil accounting and some other employees that don't do desktop support, but we essentially have 3 full-time employees, and I'm one of them. I'm both a technician, I'm an administrator, I'm a tech integrator, I wear many hats. We have finite resources in terms of personnel. And so we need to be as efficient as possible. And so some of the tools that we've acquired and we're starting to use they're going to bear the fruit of that efficiency. We're looking forward to that. Dr. Suri and I and the principals, all the building principals, will need to collaborate on that second bulleted point. All of our state standardized tests have taken place with paper and pencil up to this point, we can no longer do that. So whatever the state test will appear like in the spring, we have to be prepared for that. So I have been purchasing in that direction. We feel like we're well ahead of the curve in terms of devices, but I put purchasing up there because the Chromebooks aren't everything for the test. They will take the test on Chromebooks and in a lab situation, but we're going to provide them with mice so that students will use the keyboard and the mouse instead of the keyboard and the trackpad. I think it's a little bit more familiar that way. Finally, well, not finally, there's another slide, but moving forward, we are Children's Internet Protection Act compliant. We are SEPA compliant. We do receive federal funds. We do have an internet content filter. It's a very robust tool, but it is very dull blade. It is not very refined. It doesn't allow me to blacklist or whitelist certain topics. It doesn't allow me certain administrative reports that I'm looking for. And so the state had a statewide contract come out in August, right before the school year, and they said you've got a week to consider which one you want to go with. I think that's too short a time. I'm not that type of person. I need to be deliberate and considered about it. I want to look at the two products. I don't want to be forced into buying an appliance and buying a product and being disappointed in it. So that's one of our large initiatives that the department and the irregularly meeting Technology Advisory Committee will be meeting on this year is internet content filter. Which device do we like that's on the statewide bid? And we'll move forward with that next summer. My final couple of objectives are collaboration. I know Dr. Gray mentioned the Human Resources Department in the last board meeting. I'd like to really a lot more fully integrate with the Human Resources Department because there's a lot of assets that all the users have. I'd like to be able to anticipate when we hire people, when we're taking on people, I'd like to know it as soon as possible so that we know what devices that particular role has, whether that person needs a phone and a computer or just a laptop or a laptop and a document camera. We need to know those things for purchasing reasons. So the channels that we buy through, we don't just go to Best Buy to buy our devices. We go through channels that provide us with incentivized pricing, and we also don't buy sort of consumer grade products. We buy very durable products. So we need a better anticipatory window to work with to supply the new employees with devices. The other side of that coin is we need to work with the Human Resources Department when people separate from employment with Brighton area schools so that when they're turning in their ID badge, when they're turning in their keys, they're also turning in the $2,000 laptop or the $500 document camera. We need to grab those back too. So I'm a little bit controlling in some ways, and that's one of them. I'm a little bit obsessed about making sure we get our assets back. And then board meeting filming. That's a recent bulleted point that I added on here based on the last board meeting. Dr. Gray and Jay talked to me about, or it was mentioned that I should investigate this, and I told Jay before the meeting. It's the technology piece of providing both a stream of the board meeting and an archive of the board meeting. That's the simple part. The harder part is discovering how we can facilitate this. And my ideas were, and if we're going to work on a committee basis or if we're going to work with people, my idea would be to involve Mr. Johnson and perhaps the journalism department at the high school to provide kids with not only an educational opportunity to be a part of the board process, but also I think a vocational opportunity too. So this could parlay into some sort of research or study in their future when they go off to school. Okay, some of my challenges. This is my last slide. I know I'm going long. I don't know. I didn't check my time. Finite resources. What we need to do is we need to start considering that bond monies are running out, because they are. And we haven't had our 2015-16 budget meeting yet with Paul Twigg and Dr. Gistinger, but we know that based on last year's numbers and all the purchases that took place, that users can no longer treat the bond budget like a store and that everything is just freely available. So part of my job is to disabuse people that it's a never-ending fund that can provide all of the items that they're requesting. Another challenge that we have moving forward, and Dr. Gistinger and I have collaborated on this, when she was building budgets last spring, I went in to talk to her about post-bond replacement budgets. So we're building into budgets now a little piece, a little line item that talks about replacement, because we have repair, we have damage, and we have replacement issues that will be upcoming post-bond time. And so we need to be prepared for that. We can't be in a space where after the bond is done and we don't have a regularly occurring line item so that we can replace, let's say, one school's worth of devices, and then the following year, another school's worth of devices. So we need to be prepared for that. Okay, so I covered 16 or so slides with a lot of information. I tried to talk as rapidly as possible. Any questions so far? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Chesney, I forgot to mention another recent initiative is he largely authored a tech innovation grant, and I just provided the tool to disseminate it and for us to analyze all the responses. And that we are receiving responses the last time I checked. And I'm fielding a lot of individual email inquiries about how can I do this or how much would this cost. And I'm trying to respond to those, but I'm also on the review committee, so I'm trying to not, with you, and I'm trying to not show any favoritism or provide too much insight in the way that would tip the scales in their favor. But that's one of the recent initiatives that just came out in the last couple of weeks. I sent the email, what was it, last week? And then
midweek.
And so I sent it to the principals who disseminated it to the buildings. And so that's a recent development.
Related to that, I was going to ask that you go back to slide 10.
I can?
And I just wanted to say thank you for putting together the Google Doc for this technology innovation grant. I mean, somehow in the busyness, and I'm sure of the startup of the new academic year, you were able to put that together on time in wonderful form and just did an amazing job. And I know it's going to simplify the process as these grant proposals come in. So I just wanted to give you kudos similar to this for being able to do that in an amazingly busy time of your life, I'm sure, at the start of the school year. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Thanks. Thanks for letting me be involved too. So I'm looking forward to what will result from the process.
Well,
Any other
I
questions?
want to thank Jim for coming in and sharing the science and math center, and Chris coming and talking about technology. We know we spent a lot of money on it over the last couple of years, and you hear all great stuff, but it's nice to hear one big roll-up of what it's doing for the kids, what it's doing for the district, and helping us become the best district in the state of Michigan. So
That's our goal. Thank you. Thank you, guys, and Beth.
Just one quick thing. Great job, Chris and Jim. If you were only here 7 years ago and saw how few computers we had, it's kind of fun to watch because I think we had less than a couple hundred and none of that other stuff and phone systems failing. So kind of put it in perspective, and I appreciate that. We don't have the student rep here tonight from the bridge, but we do have Ms. Deven here tonight. So maybe she could jump up to the mic real quick and give the same type of update that maybe the student would have given.
It's the teacher representative tonight.
You can just podium.
I am so sorry that our student representative is not here. I don't know why he's not here. Hopefully, it's nothing serious. And I just want you all to know how much we appreciate this opportunity. A Bridge student was invited last year to participate in the board meetings once a month, and we really appreciate. So I feel so terrible that he's not here. So we definitely will have someone here next month, and I understand your frustration, Arnella. So far this year, we started our new online program, and we so far have 10 students enrolled, which is awesome. I didn't expect that. I expected maybe 6, so I'm asking Chris now for more laptops. The Michigan Alternative Education Organization STARS Leadership Group, our student leadership group, had a fundraiser over the weekend in South Lyon. We raised $300, which is a lot for us, and that will go towards more events for our students to participate in for the rest of the school year. The Mayo stands for Michigan Alternative Education Organization. The leadership team, the student team, the annual kickoff is in Lansing next month, and our leadership team will participate in that. And that's it. But I thank you so much for, like I said, having our student represent us once a month, and we will have someone here next month. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, that brings us up to our 4 action items tonight. The first item up is the minutes of the September 14th, 2015 board meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
A motion support. Any discussion on the minutes from the 14th? I see none. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0, 1 absent. Next item up is a strategic plan that we all got a copy of at the last meeting to review.
I did get a couple of responses, though, that you might want to table it tonight, but I'd like you to point out specifically, I saw the hashtags towards the back in terms of that. I think those were new initiatives, that's why they were there, so we can edit those. But specifically the other ones, because there have been a lot of versions of this from the beginning to the end, and we want to make sure we capture exactly what you'd like. So if we could at least talk about that a little bit tonight so we know what to edit, we'd appreciate that.
I know I did talk to Ms. Munn, we were just kind of chatting about the hashtags. And at first I agreed that like, well, there should be something there, but at the same time, I think part of the strategic plan is coming up with things to put there over time. I mean, not necessarily putting in a dollar figure, a number right now, but that becomes something that we're going to work towards, because it's really, a strategic plan is generally a living document. If you don't lock it down today and say 5 years from now, we're going to pull it back out and do something. So if there's things that need to change or be adjusted on it as we go,
Sure.
I think that's acceptable to have the hashtags here. I don't know if anybody else had any specific items. I know Dr. Chesney talked about some differences from what we thought the last thing we did on the 18th of June, I believe.
Yes.
It might not have been translated to this final copy, so. So I think tabling it's okay. I don't know if anybody has a problem. I mean, I think as a group, we want to get it as accurately representing what we did in June, adopt it, and then start working through, the details behind it.
I thoroughly agree on the tabling it. There's just, I think there's some items that I thought that we agreed would be in here that aren't, and some items that are in here that I thought we agreed to wouldn't be in here that are. So I think we should table it, but then the question becomes, what process do we use to get it from its current state into a strategic plan that we will indeed approve? I mean, we had we had the 3 meetings earlier.
Just feed it back through Greg and I or the whole board. I mean, I don't think.
I'd rather go through the whole board, because again, I get it from 1 or 2, and then it might not align with somebody else. Not that you can make decisions via the email, but you can show that, and you can comment, obviously, in relation to that. But I think that would work if you shot me that, and then I could shoot it back to them.
But yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, I don't want it to become, half hour. I want to try to get it.
So Dr. Chesney, give me 1 or 2 of the highlights that you think are not present.
So I think, I mean, for one, I think the pound sign, right? That's let's add some detail here. So to me, putting together a strategic plan that has that, I mean, we have to add more meat to it. It's like, which way are we going on those? Some items included that I thought we eliminated were on, as an example, on page 14. I thought that we broke, especially related to curriculum, that I thought we broke it down into each of the individual pieces for strategies, and then like kind of restating the long-term and ongoing goals. I thought we got rid of that page. I thought, back at the June 18th meeting.
Would you repeat that, please?
Sure.
I was looking at this document, which doesn't have.
Okay,
Which
so,
one?
and I'm
Numbers.
talking the one that's in the board packet.
Okay.
On page 14.
Right.
And it has long-term and ongoing goals and strategies.
Yep.
And I thought that when we put together well, let's give credit where credit is due. When Dr. Suri put together the multiple different steps on the strategies related to, number 1, improve consistency and quality of instruction practice. I mean, I think we added all of that detail, and then we got rid of page 14, the items that are on page 14. That's what I remember happening.
So eliminate page 14 completely?
But replace it with
Well, it's got to be captured somewhere.
more detail. Right?
Well, it is all captured. I mean, it is captured
In the rest of the
strategies.
document.
This is,
So you're just saying page 14 reiterated what was said earlier?
yes,
So you just thought it was redundant, you could take that out?
yes.
As long as
And
it's-
I thought we had decided that it was taken out.
I remember that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, we were trying to get rid of a lot of redundancy.
Good one.
And then I also thought that we had in there too, that we were going to have, as we did tonight, that we were going to have informational presentations on the Math and Science Center, on the International Baccalaureate, and then on an approach to coding and programming languages. And I remember having that discussion also at our planning.
We talked about that at central office and didn't know if we had consensus to put it in the strategic plan or if we were just going to do presentations, so we never put it in.
Okay.
But let us know if you'd like it in or not. Because our recollection when Dr. Green was here was there was a discussion, it was towards the middle or the end of that in terms of those three categories, and we didn't feel like there was ever, yes, put it in the plan at that point. And he sent me his copy and it didn't have it originally. So he didn't capture it either, but that's fine if you want it in there. We just need to know.
My memory is that it was in the strategic plan.
Okay.
That's-
Well, but tonight we carried forward what I thought we wanted to, like tonight, looking at the special math program kind of idea. I think that was what we agreed to do. So I would support that it's working forward. I don't think it's in the plan for the entire school system that other stuff was included.
It included strictly for information, that we would pursue having informational presentations.
Right, but not necessarily
I
in
was
this.
just trying to say,
Right.
if it's for clarification, like, if you say we want to explore IB and this and
Yes.
this, that sounds like it's something you also
Not part
want
of
to
this.
build, but if you say we want to explore new initiatives such as these things, that's just exploratory.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that belongs in the strategic plan, but that would be, you're telling me what to put in there, that's fine.
Okay.
I believe it doesn't personally. I believe what we just did was perfect. And then we added to it, like you said, it's a moving document. We can add it to it if it gets adopted, it becomes more permanent. If that makes sense. But I think it looks pretty good.
This was the exact discussion we had at central office.
Okay.
We could not figure out.
As we say, like if you go under the first goal of teaching and learning is improve consistency and quality of instructional practices, all of these items would be
All under that.
an action item under that goal.
Okay.
If that's the right phraseology. So I mean, as long as we're capturing it in our meeting minutes and our upcoming agendas, we're probably fulfilling the intent of the strategic plan without putting it in the plan specifically. Just one opinion.
And we also might have captured that in, I'm looking at your own document again, improve consistency and quality of curriculum program development model. 3.2, continuous science curriculum review, alignment, exploration of STEM curriculum. So that's in there.
On page 12, item 3.2, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
3.2, page 12. And again, we talked with Dr. Surrey about what's being done at the state level too.
Right.
World language, technology.
Again, if these are statements as explore new initiatives such as these, that's fine, but as Dr. Chesney and I have spoken about, what's the science one? I'm getting that confused.
Project Lead the Way.
Project Lead the Way.
Project Lead the Way. It's just one of 4 or 5 that
Yes.
we want to explore, but we wouldn't list all these in here.
Right.
You just want us to explore those things, so you could say, for example, but I'm hesitant to say, put these things down, because I don't feel like that's a roadmap, I've got to build these things, because I don't know if there's consensus for that, or if that's the direction of the district as we go through a process of discovering those things, learning about those things.
So what would be the wording that you think would be appropriate then?
Well, that's why I intentionally left all the wording pretty vague as far as improving our instructional delivery model, our assessments, our curriculum processes, so that lots of things would fall under those things. So if you want to be more specific, just put for example and list those things there. We're going to look at them one way or the other, but I just wouldn't put it as a list of things to do necessarily.
Yeah, I believe you brought up those initiatives at the board table.
Yes.
We didn't necessarily talk about it at this time, and those were things you wanted to explore.
We did talk about it during strategic planning.
Yeah, but I think we're
We
addressing.
did, and there was a discussion, but we just felt there was no consensus or a way to put it in with like Dr. Surrey was saying, addressing 5, 6, 7 more other pieces, so.
Specific as if we are going to do.
I think it would almost be advantageous if each year or even during her subcommittee, or when we have our retreat each year, to bring up those initiatives, and then we can explore them like we did tonight with Jim.
So, to wrap it up, let's just take the next couple weeks. Y'all got 2 copies from last week and one this report packet. See if there's anything you want touched up. Send it to everybody on the board, to include Dr. Gray and Dr. Surrey. And then you can compile and we can readdress, and then if we have consensus, we can probably put it on for action for at the next meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
And I'll eliminate the hashtag.
Yeah. But, so it's tabled. We all have a board action to take for the next meeting. It'll be on for action at the night. Thank you, Dr. Teddy, Dr. Gray. For future action, Dr. Gray.
In a couple weeks, we'll ask that you accept the donation from Brighton NC Machine Corporation of a CNC machine. I don't know a ton about this machine. Maybe John or Bill could talk more about it, but I do not.
The opportunity has come up that Brighton NC is going to help kind of co-sponsor us a little bit in this area of CNC machining. And they asked Bill and I to come out and look at a piece of equipment. We looked at the piece of equipment. They're going to load it with tooling at no charge. They're going to provide the technical expertise to teach, as well as the affiliations to the software programming to make this machine be up and running. And the neat thing about it is the Brighton NC Group is now a global company. They start from empty ideas to coming up with visions, blueprint, final CMM rooms. They've developed quite a company, and they're located on Whitmore Lake Road in Brighton, and they have a need for people. So their CEO and general manager would like to come next week and actually do a presentation as well, and then like Jay to look at possibly putting him on the agenda for like a discussion time under Dr. Gray, superintendent. And he'd like to do a small presentation of kind of the vision they have to work with Brighton area schools for teaching. We currently have a Brighton area schools student there, well, now he's graduated, but they have not only interned him, he was our first actual technical co-op student at this level of training. So they've paid for his training, now they're going to pay for his college. He's full-time as well as overtime optional. I heard he was working, went out for lunch the other day, he's receiving some overtime. This is kind of the pilot student. This young man had worked in our auto lab for a few years, and he had a very good job history prior. And when they hired him, they weren't sure what they were going to get. And the report I got back is they're extremely happy with this young man, and they're looking to go forward and add more students. And what I think will happen is they may train students that they don't plan even to employ in the long run, that they go out to be employed somewhere else. I think that's what we're going to hear, that they're willing to help us with that delivery. And they are, like I said, a now worldwide operation. They do stuff for Mercedes, they do stuff for Chrysler, they do, I was in the shop the other day and it's going. And so it'll be a great opportunity, and to hear that their CEO would like to come in. So that's what's going on with that, and it's a beginning. Like I said, it's a great start. So, thank you.
One technical question.
Yes.
Is it a 4 or 5 axis machine, do you know?
Don't know.
It's 4.
Is it 4?
I believe.
It's fairly current, and what it is not big enough for some of the stuff they're doing, and it may be, like I said, that when we get to that, it's all I know is that the replacement of the machine is this side south of 100,000, and this machine in its capacity at this date is still pretty valuable, and which is really important to us. So it's a great starting point.
We'll be able to install it in the auto shop in the existing, or what used to be the bus wash bay, and we moved the hoist out of there into the other shop area.
Correct.
And worked out well.
And that's
then
already done.
We'll have to do some electrical work through the bond, but that should not be a big issue for that machine.
I have a technical question. What is a CNC machine?
Well, today's times, in the day, if you
Computer.
remember, it is. Well,
Yeah.
in the day, if you remember, manual cranking of lathes and chips flying, and you'd be cranking handles back and forth and this and that. A CNC is basically a machine. It's computer numerical controls. And what they do is you program your laptop, basically, and then this machine will make this case. And if you go in Mr. Jordan's classroom, it's really neat if you go in and look at what he's doing right now. He's doing the 3D, is that 3D? Is that what that's called?
3D printer.
Yeah, the 3D printer, so he can draw it
Yeah.
and then build it in plastic.
You'd
And
put
that-
coordinates in for the CNC.
Same
and
kind
then
of
it
idea.
shaves it down in accordance
They
with
don't
your
make the
coordinates.
same
I used to
part
teach
of a
about
raw piece of
I used to
material.
teach
With metal or?
metal, wood,
Anything you want to make.
plastic, all sorts of stuff.
But the same idea. Yeah, but if you look at what's going on in Mr. Jordan's bench, this is in a real-life technology world. He's got a machine that's this big. This one is going to be the size of that area. The chairs.
11,000 pounds.
Yeah, what is it now?
11,000
We're up to 11?
pounds.
Oh, it is, jeez, well, they told me it's less.
We're
than
gonna push
that.
it in place tomorrow.
Okay,
Enjoy it.
thank you.
Okay, so that's great, like I said, great news
Ram it
first,
with my truck.
good
Yeah,
opportunity.
We'll sort something out for the next, when it's on for action. We'll talk to you.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you for acquiring that, by the way.
Oh, it's, like I said, another backup, the Brighton NC folks that work there, from the Clausensers and Bartons to everybody that runs the operation, are prior students of Brighton area schools and live in this community, and they are 100% for working with our students. And I think that's another great, what do we want to call it, ally for us.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Next item up is for information, curriculum instruction. Dr.
Yeah, just
Surratt.
a few updates. I was reminded when Dr. Turner was presenting, and he was talking about the limits of the department because of personnel, and they get so much out of a very small team of people. And there's really not a team as hardworking as that group is really across the district. They're constantly being pulled out and drawn away, and so I think they do amazing work. But it reminded me, in curriculum, we have basically myself and 3 instructional coaches that do the systems building. And, you know, sometimes when we talk about initiatives that are very specific, I tend to start to get, you know, like a little nervous because the way we manage, just like the way Dr. Turner manages, he's found a way to manage so many responsibilities with so few people. And we found a way to manage a huge task and responsibilities with very few people as well. And so our focus is always on systems building and not so much on building an initiative or creating, you know, one thing at a time, because when we do that, it takes us away from the main work. Because if you build a system, we always say you build it, they will come. So you build a system, and then people just slip into their roles, and it takes a lot of give and take because it's not always pretty when you start a new system. So I just wanted to share with you guys like some of the systems we've built, and we're going to be presenting, I guess, the next board meeting. I'm going to say very little. I'm going to have the 3 coaches present so you get to know them better. But we just are wrapping up CAP meetings across the district this week. Those are collaborative action teams. And that's our RTI system, which we take the kids in the bottom 25-30% of achievement on universal screenings, nationally benchmarked tests, and put them in intervention groups. And that's what these teams were about, was identifying those students and then bringing the teachers together to have planning time to what are we going to do for those students. We know what the intervention is going to do, what our educational system is going to do for them, but what are we going to do in the classroom or with partner teachers across the grade level. So that's a system we built probably 5 years ago, and it's really been quite a success. Data team meetings across the district, and again, getting data in the hands of the teachers. We're getting more and more of our staff trained in Illuminate, which is a data management system, so we're using that. Right now, something new this year we're building are learning studios, and this is kind of a vision that we've had for a new kind of professional development here. It's outside the school day, but we have, in our district, seriously, we have probably the best professional development providers in the state of Michigan. And I'm not just talking about Chris Darkowski, Kim Hubert, and Wendy O'Keefe, who are nationally trained providers in various areas, but we have principals, we actually have superintendents and principals, directors who are, again, outstanding providers of professional development. And we want to give opportunities for them to be teachers. Keeping kids in the classroom with their teachers during the day instead of pulling them for PD. We want to minimize that this year. But these learning studios you're going to hear more about. And Chris Darkowski just started one this week for Readers and Writers Workshop. And I believe she said she had 11 teachers, totally voluntary in terms of participation, and they'll meet throughout this year. So I think that's an exciting new system that we're trying to build. The last one I just wanted to bring to your attention, teacher evaluation needs to be upgraded because this year with state law, we have to have student growth and achievement account for 50% of the teacher's evaluation. So we have a really nice model here in which student achievement has been a factor, and that's what the law has asked us to do. Now, this year it says 50%. So the coaches and I, Jeff Bean from the high school, who I say Mr. Johnson, Mr. Vecchione, brilliant to hire him or bring him to us because he's going to be a great asset for instruction and curriculum at the high school. Anyways, the 4 or 5 of us are working on that, and so you'll be hearing more about that coming up in the future. As you can see, all the things I'm sharing are kind of like they're big and it's kind of hard to pin it down, and it's got to be built. So again, that takes us time. In the meantime, just a couple really quickly. AWIMS getting started for all Maltby Scranton elementaries. Achieve 3000 is being launched for our 3rd and 4th grade. It's online writing in science and social studies to improve their informational text, reading, and comprehension of writing. So we're excited about that. Met last week with Dr. Chesney about the idea of perhaps bringing coding or computer science as a unit or as an elective or something to Scranton Middle School. Mr. Mark Wilson, Kirk Hobson are really interested, and Kim Hubert's supportive of bringing. I mean, I really think that would be a unique feather in our cap as a curriculum direction if we taught computer science to our 7th or 8th graders in some capacity. We were talking about like STEM. To me, STEM's kind of getting to be, okay, people have that. Nobody has computer science at the middle school, so we're exploring that. Dr. Chesney's kind of supportive of that as well, and so you're going to hear more about that down in the future coming up too. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Suri.
Can I just add just one thing to that? And this is backing up everything that Dr. Suri said. Today and tomorrow in the College of Engineering at the University of Michigan is a career fair. And this is College of Engineering wide, every discipline of engineering. And 90% of the employers that are there want students with computer science background. So, and this is consistent with, with programming CNC machines, with programming for robotics. It is a new literacy. And anything that we can do for our students to build up their background in programming languages and coding, if we can get them interested in 7th and 8th grade and build a curriculum, through the high school, if part of our goal is to make employable citizens who can contribute, then anything that we can teach them in that area will certainly do so. So thank you for all of your efforts in that area.
On a note on that, Dr. Chesney, that AWIM program, which is a World in Motion that's sponsored by General Motors, which is led by Dan Delisle, the latest idea is they're going to train our high school students to then go back and start to teach the middle school students, and they're working with the coding language. In fact, Maria, I think, approved the purchase of the language, some software that needed to go with that so they could do that. So it's beginning, and I believe the number of student contacts last year in the middle school was over 800 through the AWIM program. And they all did some fuel cell technology vehicles. They had some other ones that were different type, but the idea, so it's happening. So I think, I think you've been working on this for 8 years now, I think, or however long ago I met you out here when you were kind of writing it on my hand, please get this going, correct? I mean, way ahead of this, so good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Finance, we got the bills.
Yes, good evening, Board. In your packet are the bills of September 11th through the 18th, and also it's been interesting to hear some of the presentations this evening and hear about how far we've come in such a short period of time. And I continue to want to keep the good news going. I would like to point you to page 30 in your board packet. There are last 3 numbers on that page. You can see that this is our June 30th, 2015 financials, and we expect to end the year with $1,453,000 of positive fund equity. As a percentage of revenue, that's 2.29%. As a percentage of expenditures, that's 2.52%. As I was sitting here this evening doing some quick calculations, I've been living with these numbers for about 3 months, so this is probably news to you as this is the first time this has been presented. But if you look at where we started the fiscal year with minus 4.3 million negative fund equity to 1.4 million positive fund equity, that is almost a $5.8 million swing in our fund equity in 1 year. Now, granted, $1.1 million of that is from the sale of Limbom, but we still added $4.6 million to our fund equity in 14-15. And from a percentage basis, We went from a minus 6.8 negative fund equity to a positive 2.3 roughly fund equity, which is a 9.1% swing in our fund equity. So again, great news. We are definitely out of a deficit. And one report you don't have on your agenda this evening is our monthly deficit elimination plan. I hope this is the end of it.
Next item
Jay,
is financial strategy.
I like it. What did you project last year that we have at this time?
I couldn't tell you. You have to bring
Somewhere around $2.5 million.
I don't
Probably
believe so.
closer to 3, I think, originally.
3?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you. Financial strategy, I'll kind of cover that quick. I know that we've got the 3 members of the board that are going to be on the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee. We're going to work out some potential dates and times to start meeting and frequency. I know we've got a suggestion of prior to this meeting on the Mondays. I don't know if that's good for me necessarily, but I think between now and the first meeting in October, we'll have a plan on how we're going to address the recurrence of that and then whatever administration and how we want to put that committee together with some suggestions from you, Bree, okay? And anybody have a problem with that? That's good.
What choice do we have?
One.
I tried to get on it, you want me on it, so, you know, I tried to get on it. I wanted, yeah, it's just, you know,
If anybody leaves, you'll be the first person to want.
I appreciate that. How about if they're just not there?
Well, you can't do that.
Okay, just check.
Next one, human resources.
You've received lately a couple emails from me in relation to exit strategies in terms of exit interviews and checkoff sheets. They align with what Dr. Turner was saying tonight in terms of equipment, keys, badges, all those things as we transition people in and out of the organization. I haven't received a ton of feedback, but the feedback I have received has been very beneficial. We've tweaked the document in relation to those. We'll be working through the HR committee on that. We have another quarterly meeting coming up in several weeks from now, and we should have all the things that were asked for out of the first meeting accomplished by then and can work through more good stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Board reports. Any board reports? Okay.
A few days ago, I asked Dr. Gessinger to look up some, it's called, I think, added cost funding regarding our CTE program that we received from LASA.
High school programs?
High school programs.
Ranked in the top 50?
Right.
Correct.
And I'm seeing that this year, we're going to receive $197,000 in added cost funding for the CTE programs. I looked through all, I think, 5 years, and I might add, I called and she had it to me in a day, so, or less hours maybe, thank you. And I got to look through it, and I see over the years, back in 11, 12, it was only 57,000. And then I see it grew to 69 and kept growing, kind of like the stuff I like to see, because that means we have more students that bring that money to us, correct? Is it on student count? What determines how we get this money?
So this year, the legislators put more money into vocational education. That's why we received an extra allotment. It's a grant.
Well, we were going to get 101,000, and the extra allotment from the state
Right.
gave us some more money.
Correct.
But it grew, it doubled though from 50 to 101 on its own, kind of over 5 years. The state kept ramping it up.
Yes.
We realigned our programs in relation, because remember, they don't fund all 50 programs.
Correct.
And so if we are running program 47, probably not going to get funding in relation to it in terms of added costs, because they only typically fund the first several.
Okay.
And so when we realign, when Mr. Johnson and Mr. Vecchiotti and Dr. Suri realigned that programming to meet the needs, which is tied to jobs, obviously, in the economy of Michigan, that drew more added cost funding to the district.
Okay, that's good. And so we're addressing needs that need to be met, and we're receiving some funding to do so.
That's correct.
Okay, and I also see in here that our substitute teachers are paid for out of this account for the classes.
If they go to a training, if our teachers go to a vocational training that is put on by LESA, it may not necessarily be at LESA, but it can be somewhere in the state. They reimburse us for the cost of having a substitute in that classroom while the teachers are receiving this vocational training.
Okay, so it's not coming out of this 197,000 technically.
if they go to a training in this, somewhere in the state that's related to vocational education, then the grant will reimburse the district for the cost of their sub in the classroom.
Okay, so this isn't like if someone's off sick for a week.
Nope.
You're talking a very.
It's professional development.
It's professional development. So in this, then, I see that in marketing, we spent 1,600, we're planning on spending 1,600, 1,500. Childcare, not as much, only a couple hundred. In the auto program, 1,800. Graphics, 1,500. So we're planning on spending that much money and sending our teachers out for training then.
Correct.
Okay. Well, what I would like to do, and that, being that that's the case, that's different than I thought, because it says sub on there. I thought we were paying for substitutes when they're off sick or something out of that fund. Is I'd like the board to know about how much money is coming in, this $197,000. And I would like the board to be cognizant that we need to direct this $197,000 specifically to career technical education courses, because that's what it was sent to us for.
You have to.
You have to. It can't go anywhere else.
It's a grant.
Part of it is, I think okay, so then, in this case, when we look at foods and consumables, I assume that's for Ms. Park's class.
We have to fill out all kinds of paperwork.
Right, to get
and
that?
it just stays there.
Okay, all right, so that account goes to you. All right, so, so the only thing you can do
They
is
can't pay
CT
for anything else.
programs.
Correct.
All right, because I was told by another official that, not in our district, though, that they could use it for mowing grass if they wanted to.
For mowing grass?
Yeah, paying for the lawnmower.
I suppose if they had a mowing grass program that was funded out of added cost, they probably could.
Okay, all right.
It's not a joke. I mean, that's
No,
true.
I know that. I know.
If a small engine repair or something, they might be able to get through with that, but we don't have any of
Okay,
those, so it would not work.
So we're committed then that this $197 and added dollars to our district goes to every CT program we have.
Correct.
And then our instructors are aware of that money. They know how to ask for it, apply for it.
Oh, for sure.
Mr. Johnson had a meeting with them and sent an email to them to instruct them on how to go about planning for the use of that money.
Well, I want to make sure that it's all used. Okay? I don't want anything held over. I mean, per year, that's probably not, it's just enough, in my opinion. I look at the DECA, and I was thinking about the school store and how it didn't get its new tables out in the hallway. We talked about setting up kind of a business arrangement and different things. Is this money available to do that with?
That's phase 3 of the bond, so that would be different. We just completed the phase 2 portion. Phase 3 will be coming up shortly. That could be a project we choose to do under phase 3. It wasn't in the original scope of the bond, so it would be out of contingencies we've saved because the projects have come in under budget on the other ones that we've done. So if that's something that the bond committee chooses to do after we solicit bids, or if we look at the cost of the project and there's a big enough bang for the buck, that could be a project that was done, but there are other projects that are in line prior to that that were original scope in terms of the bond on phase 3.
So my original idea then is that we have this $197,000, we have $90,000 that we didn't plan on. Can't money like this be used to help these projects be continued and furthered along, and not worry about bond money, and give that teacher that opportunity?
I would say only if that program was part of the added cost funding model that we originally had. But we can check. We'll meet with Mr. Johnson and Dr. Surrey.
I would like to see that we move forward, that each program gets looked at, and each program gets what it needs. And let's say 1 year, you got it done in one place. Let's say, for instance, we can use the health occupations room. That's done, right? It's pretty much ready to run. She doesn't need any additional.
Correct.
So this year, we don't have to add more to it. Okay, but then let's just use again, let's say our Nellis countertops didn't get finished, or whatever it is. The issue is, though, that I believe we need to get that focused, and I'd like to see it in how it's been out, and I think it's minimal, and I think Maria, with the absence of this, she's been able to help the school district, whatever you call her, and she seems to get it taken care of either way, but I just want to see it get spent, and I want to see these
We'll
programs
spend it.
not wait another year, though.
Yeah.
No, I know, but not wait another year, get this done, that these kids get this
But
advantage.
it's got to be done within the scope of the grant.
Well, it's done for the right classes, but I want to see these young people.
It has to be done within the scope of the grant.
I got that.
We'll
But
take a look at how that spending goes.
that gets me to the next thing. All right,
Yep.
that gets me to the next thing. So I said what I had to say on this.
Yep.
So the subs aren't getting paid out, and I'm happy with that. All right. So now on to my next thing. I handed out tonight to the board members, it's Michigan Association of School Board, what your board member responsibilities are. And this kind of fit into when we tabled the other thing. That was good because I think sometimes we underestimate our responsibilities. And if you look on the top, in the first paragraph, it says there's 545 school districts, local school districts governed by a school board. It talks about revised school code. We should all probably read that a little bit. But then you get down to, towards the bottom, who is responsible for the educational program of the school district? It's pretty clear, under state law, school board members are state officers who carry out the state's educational obligations at the local level. They oversee the education of the people in the community. Now, you go down to the bottom, it talks about what are some of the powers and the duties of the school board. Flip the page. Talks about what we're just talking about, making sure that these CT programs are underway. Under Michigan law, the Board of Education has the ultimate responsibility for the school district operation. Among other things, the revised school code gives each Board of Education general powers to educate students, provide for the safety, acquire and dispose of the school property, which we do, to manage relating to school employees, control expenditures, which we all pretty good at it. But then you move down to the next paragraph, setting the curricula and courses taught in the schools. Now, we've been told from past chiefs, not currently, that that wasn't the job of the school board. But in fact, state law says it is. No matter what the policy is that we think we want to adopt, wherever it's at, it doesn't trump state law. State law overrides it. So I handed these out, so we just get, this is just a general look at it. And I think that you understand that, and I believe, and I listened to Dr. Chesney bringing forward the gentleman tonight. I think it's wonderful he brought him in tonight to hear what he had to say. I would encourage all the board members to come up with some ideas similar to that and bring out their skills and passions and continue that. So we're looking at new things to develop our school and hold firm on it. And Dr. Gessinger's on track. She'll be able to fund these new things if they become a board decision that they want to do it. And Dr. Gray obviously is open-minded to listen to anybody he does. So that's my idea. So that's on that. Are there any questions on this, the stuff from Michigan? Yeah, I know. We have new board members though that I may not have given it to. So I'm making sure everybody got a copy. All right. The next thing, a week or so ago, I was up north at Mackinac Island, and I did some listening to the governor and some visions and different things that he had in mind, and some presidential candidates and, you know, and how they're going to save things. And anyhow, there was one program I noticed that might apply to what we're doing. It says, okay to say. This is a registration form. Have you seen this?
We do it.
We are involved in it. That's what I wondered. Okay, so I don't know if the other board, do our board members know we're involved in all of this? But we're in. So you're signed up. I'll just pass that down and everybody can look at it. And it's kind of a neat thing. In a recent meeting last week at high school, this is the next item, I was at the robotics kind of a kickoff, and they are so well organized this year, from structure of the team to the top down, and I would like to congratulate this board in the sense that they move forward on a risk by posting positions to hire academic coaches. So we officially have hired one. Is that correct? To do extra work in academics, Maria? Dr. Gessinger?
I am unclear of the hiring. Dr. Surrey would know.
Okay, so we've hired a coach to coach, just like we would coach the volleyball team, but this is an academic situation. And I think it's a big move on the school's part to take a risk on this, and our board to support it. And I would like to let you know after the meeting that I sat in, and then I hear they've got is it BCom? This part, I think they have a big thing in the hallway. They go celebrate, try to have the ideas out there and recruit. They're going through a whole process that is really good. And so by taking a risk, you've given our students more opportunities. Okay? So thank you for doing that. And that was not easy to get done. I'd like to let you know I've been working on it since 2002 at Scranton Middle School, trying to get assistants to coach academic competitions. We have two other positions posted right now, which would be for middle school science Olympiad. Have we gotten any results from that yet? Nothing yet. And we also have for high school science Olympiad also. So, but again, we're showing that an academic event is carrying weight just like a sporting event. And we spend $1 million or whatever it is in sports. I think we should spend that in academic competitions to do everything that Dr. Chesney wants to see our kids aspire to do. All right? And then also, I ran into, up at Mackinac,
there was a group, which I thought maybe Arnella could call, maybe they could come in. They're called Gen Op, and they're a young group that talks about, it's free thinking. I talked to their general manager today. Free thinking, liberty, young people, American opportunity, creativity, and freedom. Maybe someone like this could come into our leadership class. And I don't know a lot about them, but they had a nice card, and they talked about having these young people learn about their obligations to one being a U.S. citizen, and so on. Another thing, I've had a couple parents call regarding Patriot Week. And I was told that they didn't get anything out of Patriot Week, and nothing came home. So I wanted to ask Ken Stahl what his kids brought home for Patriot Week.
Asking the dad that misses half of that stuff, but I know it was discussed. I know we got a sheet that came back with the Pledge of Allegiance on it, and we went through it with him, and that's what I saw.
Okay. Mr. Trombley? See anything at all? Okay. Now, if I recall, last year, we took this, and this was voted in and approved to have Patriot Week in Brighton area schools. And it was a 4-3 vote, if I recall. And that concerns me. And so what I'd like to do, and I'm going to commission, or obviously I'll ask our superintendent to see how he'd like to do it, is I'd like to see the specifics of what each teacher did for Patriot Week in their class plan. I'd like it in writing and documented. All right.
Can I address that for a moment?
Not yet.
Do you have-
Thank you, though.
I'd like
Yeah, of
to
course you
address
can.
that.
Of course you can. Go ahead.
Now? I received an email last week, through, I think, Dr. Chesney, from a parent wondering what we did for Patriot Week. She said something on maybe social media was saying not enough was done. So I put out an email to the principals to give me a report on what they did in their buildings to recognize the week between 9/11 and Constitution Day. So from 9/11 through September 17th. And some of those came in early, and some of those are still coming in to me, but I would be able to provide those. And so every building did something on 9/11. Of course, we're kind of protective of the little ones, so it's more of a founding fathers, symbols, patriotic songs on 9/11, as you might appreciate. They get the older kids, they study it for days, the events around 9/11. And they do it in their social studies programs, and they do it in their English classes where they write about these things, and they discuss, and they read, and they see videos, and there is not a program in this district that did not do something. Moments of silence, flags flying at half-mast on 9/11. Then we have the whole week leading up to Constitution Day. And what supersedes Patriot Week is the fact that the federal government requires any district that takes federal dollars to celebrate and recognize Constitution Day. We've been doing this for 25 or 30 years, but certainly for the last 6 years that I've been here. And that involves our media specialists. They do a lot of research. We had our 2 technology trainers doing safari montage, flip charts, and Promethean board presentations. So what came home, I can't really account for what comes home or not, but I can tell you that across the district, K-12, we had recognition for those days. We also have chosen in this district to celebrate Constitution or Patriot Week throughout the year. And I remember Judge Warren last year being very supportive of the idea of not celebrating it just from this day to this day, because after all, that's the 3rd week of school, and it's a very busy time. So we don't have to have someone do anything for 9/11. These are people who want to acknowledge that day. And they've always had to do something for Constitution Day. So those are givens. But we celebrate Patriot Week throughout the year, especially at the high school. At Scranton Middle School, they had attorneys come in and have assemblies on the Constitution. At the high school, we had Judge Hattie and District Attorney Valancourt, I believe, came in and had an assembly for the entire junior class, and I believe that's going to be an ongoing thing. So each year as we move forward, we pick up new things. So I'm not sure if you need a report from each teacher. I'm not going to ask my math teachers how they recognize those days. I can guarantee you on 9/11, every classroom teacher talked about that. And it didn't matter if science or math, but they did. But I can forward all the principal reports. And once I responded to the parent that emailed me, she was thankful. She said, you know what, this should take care of it. Do you mind if I post this on Facebook? I asked her to check my spelling, and let's go ahead, and I'm okay with that. I'm very proud of what we do here between 9/11 and Constitution Day.
Trustee Conway, as a former teacher, I just want to say that things don't always have to come home during the week. When I taught kindergarten, we taught the Pledge of Allegiance. We said it every day. I explained it to them. I read them a book about the Star-Spangled Banner. We talked about important people in history, but I didn't necessarily send home something every day. Now, maybe that's up to the parents to talk about the children, what they did during the day, but a piece of paper does not necessarily always have to come home to show that a lesson was taught.
And I appreciate that, Beth. Ms. Minor, Trustee Minor, will do it official, but I mean seriously, in respect. And I do appreciate it. But when someone calls me and tells me that there was no indication that their student had any connection to Patriot Week, that concerned me. And which brings me on to the next thing. So I've asked for what I asked for. If you want to modify that through Laura, you guys can talk about it. I want to know what they did, specifically. I'm not changing my opinion. I believe a lot of teachers did a lot of stuff. That's not an issue. I believe it. But I'm going to go back to this. So anyway, when I was up at Mackinac Day, reading into this, it says the Constitution made easy. It's a good book, okay? The Constitution, good deal. And it actually is made easy. But what I liked the most of it, and this whole thing, it talked about the oath of office that we all took again. And it's the real oath of office, which I'm going to ask that our school board adopt. And it talks about that we solemnly swear that I'll support and defend the Constitution of the United States against foreign enemies, foreign and domestic. Talks about a few things we leave out as a school board member, not necessarily intentionally. But it talked about what our real job is here. And this is the oath of office that's been used since the Constitution was formed for virtually every government office.
Except for state government. The states have their own constitution.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But this is what they use. And I just would like it to be looked at. We'll look at it. And I think also that we should all read that book. And as we, again, and if we didn't do enough Patriot Week this week or this year, then next year we can do better. That's all. And if we did enough and everybody up here decides that that was covered and we did enough, then we'll say that was great and we'll continue doing the same thing we were doing. I think that's fair to ask. And because again, if the parent called you, you'd want to be able to respond that you did your job, and right now I'm doing what I was elected to do. And that's what I'm asking for. I think that's it. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Condon. Anybody else have a board report?
This is just for information. As you might be aware, the musical at Brighton High School has been moved from a spring musical to a fall musical. Well, actually, winter White Christmas musical. So White Christmas tickets go on sale on September 30th. So a couple days from now, if you want to get tickets to it, it's going to be between December 4th and December 13th. And go to brightonmusical.com. If they continue with the incredible quality that they've had over the last 5-6 years or so, everybody will be impressed. It is just quite a show, and I recommend that everybody go at least 3 to 4 times because it gets better each time. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are we going to have an assembly match this year against Catholic Central at Brighton?
No,
Any reason for that?
we never have. Assembly match at Brighton Catholic Central?
Yeah, we never had one.
We had one last year at Catholic Central,
We
correct?
had one at Catholic Central. Those are typically not something I'm an advocate for a number of reasons. Catholic Central is a different setting. It's an all-boys school. We have both genders at Brighton High School, so Title IX is an issue for us. So from that standpoint, complying with federal law, if you're having something showcase a boys sporting event, you need need to be similarly obligated to showcase a female sporting event, and it also takes classroom time away from our students. And lastly, typically when the bell rings, all those kids get up and leave.
How many showed up last year, do you know?
At Catholic Central.
At CC?
Yeah.
Our kids are there.
Oh, I mean, our kids.
Our kids were in a small section, I'd say maybe 100, and until the bell rang, I would say probably every kid there was there. And then when the bell rang, I think there were 4 matches left, and I would say probably 85% left.
So there's no plans to do it at Brighton? Okay.
We have them scheduled for a June match.
Thank you. All right, the last thing up here is the bond. Hopefully we'll talk about a swimming pool a little bit pretty soon.
Spotlight on the pool. I sent out a lot of pictures on social media with, it was met with a lot of great responses. People can't wait to see it in person. Pictures make it look awesome, but it doesn't do true justice. We are on track to take occupancy of the pool October 2nd. Move-in will be over the weekend, the 3rd and 4th, and I imagine regular scheduling will follow that following week. There is a long punch list being whittled down on a daily basis. I promised the board a list of these punch, and it's taking a little longer than I anticipated. It's a little more involved. They're being consolidated into one chronological list by building. Right now, they are all over the place. It takes a little bit of time, and it takes time from our operations to do that for me. But we're working together on it. I should have this to you. I'm anticipating by next weekend, and I'll get it out dispersed to everyone. And then I'll update it as it gets smaller and/or bigger as we find things sometimes, so everyone can watch that. And that's all I've got. I'm really excited about that building opening.
Again, we have an occupancy permit, or we're supposed to, but again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be complete, as we discussed being complete. There'll still be things laying around. They won't have everything wrapped up and finished, similar to what hasn't been completed yet from the bond work that was done this summertime. We're still waiting on the railing back here to be completed at the loading dock. There's other issues that still haven't been completed, as well as punch list items from last year that still aren't completed. So again, they're not going to be complete with the pool as you would think as a project. Ken and I are going to walk through on Thursday for the punch list of the pool. So the punch list that he's referring to is still work done from the summer. So don't get in your mind that they've met their date. They've opened it just like they opened the football field. But again, we got glass 2 years later. We still have issues over there with the locker room. So they're not done complete by any means.
Bill, and something on that
Yes.
too. Are we missing something in HVAC in the high school?
No, but one thing that, no, not at this time, but one thing I did want to bring back is we discussed a third party about looking at the building out at the football field. So, as a third party to look at some recommendations for fixing it. And I'd just like an update on it.
So I talked with Pete Lindau about a week ago, and we're trying to schedule a day for him to come out and meet me at the actual stadium so that he already knows the facilities, he's been on site, he can give me a pretty good idea. We've also, you and I have talked about some other fixes, and I think Pete will take a look at those particular ideas when we have them out there.
So we're doing these things, and why aren't the people that built it doing it?
We're the owner, and we tell them what to do.
Okay, so we're going to get this, and are they going to pay for Pete's time to do this? Or is this something?
I'm not going to pay for Pete's time.
Somebody's going to pay for it.
It's going to be done right, not on our dollars.
Okay, so this is kind of warranty work, we're going to call it this time. It's not extra funds, okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, this time it's the second call to the public. If you'd like to address the Board of Education, please walk to the podium.
Me too.
Name and address, and you got 3 minutes. The rules are the same as the beginning. You've got a 30-second yellow card warning, and then a 3-minute mark. So, go ahead.
Allison Cox, 689 Glenwith Road, Brighton, Michigan. I would like to ask the board to not ask every single teacher to email what they did on whatever day it was. I would like to see what happens with Dr. Suri and her emails. I drive 6 kids home from Scranton and Maltby, and all 6 of them told me what they did. So they may not have brought something physical home, but they did do something. And I feel like our teachers have way more better things to do than to respond to an email like that. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Kara Totero, 4095 Dominion Boulevard in Brighton. I'm really interested to see all the presentations that we're getting about the future of BAS, the Math and Science Center, et cetera. And I get the feeling that they're mostly focused at the high school level. And I think that we should focus a little bit more on the big gap between our magnet program and the high school. We've got 4 years in there, and it doesn't seem to be any sort of magnet program or advanced learning. I'm on the PTO at Scranton, and last spring we had an honors night, and it was by invitation only, with more than 25% of the school getting all A's or all A's and 1 B. That's a lot of kids that are excelling, and I think they can be challenged a lot more. I like that the math is a little bit more advanced once they take that test after 6th grade, but that requires them to skip 7th grade math altogether. So I think the more advanced kids could get 5th, 6th, and 7th grade math done at Maltby, if that was an option, and then they can go straight into algebra, or if that's what they want. I think there could be more options, and that doesn't even include science, English. Some of these kids can be really challenged a lot more, and I'd like you consider looking into that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address the school bus issue. I don't know whether I haven't even had a chance to watch the old meeting, so I apologize, but Wilson here is on the school bus home from Maltby, and kids are sometimes 4 to a seat on the way home. On the way in, it's not a problem, but on the way home, they're really packed in. And I know some parents are concerned about the length of the bus ride. I'm a little bit more understanding of that because I realize the square mileage we're covering with those buses is incredible, and I understand that dispatching them can't be a walk in the park either. But we tried to emphasize at the time that the decisions were made to fire all of the school bus drivers and make them reapply for their jobs, that this was going to be penny wise and pound foolish. And it's coming home to roost now. We have had a constant rotation of school bus drivers on my son's route. We've had, even in the worst of employment times in Michigan, we have not been able to hire enough bus drivers. These are folks that will not be in our employ in 10 years. This is the most important person my son sees all day long. This is the person who gets him safely transported to school and from school. The number one way that children get hurt is in car accidents. We have terrible roads, horrendous weather, and a complete absence of any police patrol that causes, and we lose children every year in these horrific car accidents. I'm from an urban area where that never happens. And every year. My point is, I don't feel safe with my kids on the road. I don't feel safe with the other drivers on the road. And to put too many of them into a school bus that's hurtling down the road at 45 miles an hour, where there's, a driveway every 14 feet and absolutely no traffic signals and no police to keep the speed limit enforced, it's just an accident waiting to happen. And we need to have less kids on those buses. And we need to think in terms of worst-case scenario. What if the bus tips over? What if it rolls? What if it starts on fire? How do you get 80 kids out of a school bus? That's how we need to be thinking. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? What route number is this particular bus going on?
You know, thank you, darling. I've heard that, but then this is what I've heard. I've heard, okay, give them the route number. So the moms, then we handle it on an individual basis, and that's great. But then we play the shell game with the routes, which I understand we have to do because we're dispatching buses and there's routes and it's part of the process. But I'm not talking about just Route 12. I'm talking about a system that we were talking about systems that we put into place where we are deliberately underpaying drivers that get no benefits so that we can squeeze more kids onto buses so we can save a dime. We have the resources to keep our children safe. There is no excuse for this, and it needs to be addressed.
So it's Route 12?
Route 12.
At least
Bus 12, sorry.
Can you look into that?
One of the one I heard about. I only heard about one route, 26.
So, because they use a lot of kids.
The only route we heard about was Route 26. We had 67 kids on a 77-passenger bus, so we moved 9 kids, so it's 56, 57, and balanced them.
This,
I
now,
haven't heard a
I
route.
could be wrong because I'm not looking at spreadsheets like you are, but what I'm reading on Brighton Friends is that there are, a dozen moms on there that are sure that there's 70
Get
kids
that.
plus.
But I go over to the bus garage and I sit down with the actual numbers.
Right.
And the numbers that we looked at didn't have any buses overloaded. 0.
But are you looking at the
just a
worst case
second.
number or the best case
closest
number?
one we had was 67 on a 77-passenger bus, and so we adjusted that bus.
Right.
But I don't, we moved it to 56 and 57 because we could tweak 9 kids. So we always take the first 2 weeks of school and see who shows up. Because we have a computer program that logs all of them, and we take all summer to pinpoint the routes and try to balance our routes. Now, people move and they come and they go, and they don't let us know.
Right.
And so the first 2 weeks of school, some buses are a little heavier, some buses are a little lighter. And then the third week of school, when we're sure that after that 8 or 9 days, depending on when we start a Tuesday or a Wednesday, we know that they're going to be riding that buses, and we follow up with phone calls and emails. We balance the buses, which we've done now.
Right,
And
it's a
so we
moving
do the
target.
same thing with the time frames in terms of rides. You have a longer ride in the morning, you have a shorter ride in the afternoon, unless you get picked up right in the middle, and then you have an equal ride both ways. I've talked to every superintendent in the county, and not that we don't want to be different, because I've heard that too, but every single school system in our county has an hour and a half max in terms of that. And every one of them buses at least an hour and a half, which is too long. We try to be closer to the hour mark. Most of them we hit. We have a couple neighborhoods out by South Lyon, one being San Crane, that for 35 years has been an issue in terms of getting them all the way there and back. It's kind of a difficult route to get to. And there's another one, I think the name's Fieldcrest, that we struggle to get kids to and from because it's just a tough route. Some of the constructions cause that too. But that's our goal in terms of that. We could do lower. Each route is about a $50,000 route when you look at the year's cost. So if you're saying add 10 routes, you're talking $500,000 in terms of that. And so that's what we weigh out on the buses. Now we take a look, and we have added routes in the past. We added 2 last year. I gave her permission to add 1 this year. We haven't had 2 yet because we were able to balance that route with
Part of the balancing is coming from the parents that don't put their kids on the bus when they see this happening, and so it's a moving target. And I mean, I can tell you 4 children on bus 12 alone that don't take the bus home anymore. So you see what I'm saying? And so what happens when they do take? Then your number goes up 4.
Correct.
So now you're 56. That day is actually
60.
60.
Right.
I think that if we were providing better customer service out the gate, and if we were overestimating instead of underestimating, then we would have a more stable number and we would have a safer situation. I think what we're doing now is we're at least in tacitly, if not deliberately, we are minimizing bus usage by parents. We're making sure that the buses are not, they're overfilled, and so less parents use them, and so we don't have to spend as much money, and so parents subsidize it by driving their kids, and then we come up with the parking lot issues like what we have at Spencer.
That's not our intention at all.
But it's the result.
I understand.
And it's not an optimal result. An optimal result is a transportation system that accommodates
children, minimizes the number of parents driving, and keeps the kids safe. That's optimal. Optimal is not persuading more parents to drive their kids to school.
It would be best, I think, if this conversation happened directly with that.
I'd be more than willing to meet with you if you'd like to.
I apologize.
No, it's okay.
No.
What you have to understand is if every parent did exactly what they're supposed to, whether it's giving us addresses, changes, moves, we would be right away.
But it still wouldn't be to the size that you want. I mean, let's be honest, it wouldn't.
Answer and have to come up with a solution, and it takes us 3 weeks to make sure everyone's serviced. If people in that 3 weeks make the decision to not ride, that's their decision, because this, Dr. and I talked a while about it last week with a number of issues, is this happens every year. This is not a surprise when we start getting emails on the third day of school saying, this bus is too long, this bus is too crowded, this bus is that. We get it every year. This is not year one of the bus problem. And by the third or fourth week, all the adjustments are made and we're usually running smooth. So if parents choose to bail out earlier than that, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing that this board can do or the superintendent can do to correct those problems.
If you want to look at it more, though, feel free to come to my office. We'll go to transportation, and we'll show you how we do the whole thing. I don't have a problem with that. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to say something? Go ahead. Just before we close the conversation about the buses, there are some kids with instruments and stuff, and they take up seats with stuff, and then there's the kid who hogs the seat and stuff. So even though there's a number, it doesn't necessarily mean that only that many seats are taken up.
No, thank you. That's a new twist.
Hi, Julie Hine, Westridge Drive, Brighton. A couple of different things. One, I want to get back to a basic concept everybody remembers, good old Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we need to be making sure that the basic issues at the base of that pyramid are solid. I just heard an incredible presentation by Dr. Turner in terms of what technology can do for us. So one of the things I would suggest is that technology can probably put something in Parent Connect, which goes out and is as available to every parent in the district with technology in terms of setting appropriate expectations. I know in my neighborhood there's between 10 and 20% turnover in families yearly. So I think we do have to anticipate that people move to Brighton. It's a bedroom community. We have, corporate headquarters opening for a bank that has 250 new families. They don't know anything. I still have people in my neighborhood that ask why Maltby is on Bauer and Scranton's on Maltby. So, these same things are going to come up. So I think I'm a little more concerned about issues of community access with the pool, issues of transparency, issues of communication, using our technology to sort of solidify the base and keep people informed in a positive way, moving the direction that we want to go. And I'm less inclined at this point, particularly when the bond is not yet complete and when we're going to have surprises and we're going to have, we have leaks in one of the football buildings and we've got water accumulating here and we've gotten this and we've got that. To use that money and make sure that what we've got so far we can maintain and take care of. Also, I just want to say in reference to the math science thing, I think all that is fabulous, but I don't want to go to the expense of creating a building and creating a program predicated on a school culture that somehow accepts the fact that these kids are going to be ostracized. That's complete anathema to me. I have a son getting a master's in aerospace mechanical engineering who came up through stuff, and yeah, there were some kids that were unkind, but there are some kids that are unkind to special ed kids. Are we going to put them in a special building too and separate them? We're talking about not siloing ideas. Now you're talking about siloing students. So I'm just saying, part of our learning for life is that we promise to accept each other's differences and celebrate meeting each learner where they are, whether they're a special needs student or 145 IQ. And that's a huge challenge. Maybe we track within the schools, maybe we offer more college prep classes in Brighton High School, that's going to be cheaper than building an entirely new building. So that's my feedback.
Short.
No run cheap.
My name is Kim Hubert, 8075 Hillside Lakes Drive. Let me know before you come because I have to clean up. So I wanted to address Mr. Colley for a minute and all of you because my children go to school, so this is a parent and as a teacher. My kids came home 9/11 weekend and then the whole week afterwards, and we had lots of conversations at home about 9/11. I think you'd be happy with that. And actually looking into more things, we watched things at home, they had lots of questions, and that conversation continues throughout the year. Also, as a person, if you have a weak constitution, speaking of that, you shouldn't go with the kids to DC. But that is a spot where they get, the experience is amazing, right? As a person who's traveled on those buses overnight, they put their eyes on the Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. They talk about it, so they're not just taking pictures and snapping selfies, although that is part of the reason. They really are going there and digging into history and walking the fields of Gettysburg. So I think you'd be really happy with the things that happened there too. Just so you know. Thank you very much.
Hi, Arnella Park, Brighton High School, room B36. Oh, sorry, that's not my house. Two things about Patriot Week. First of all, school started on September 8th, and then 9/11 was boom right there. Didn't really have a lot of time, and I know that's not an excuse. The other thing is Pink Week and Patriot Week were the same week. We knew that when we sat down and did the calendar in the spring, but there was no way to avoid it with our home football schedule only being 2 games. We had to go with that week. I would have preferred October, but it didn't work out that way. The other thing about the funding for the CTE classes, the FCS, the home ec classes, aren't covered by that money. So my countertops can't be done with that money, but back 20 years ago, when we remodeled that kitchen, we had Perkins funds. So the parenting classes and house and home, we all got lots and lots of money, and that was the money we used to do the renovation 20 years ago. But that money isn't for the class that I teach, but it could be used for school store, health occupations, graphics, and all of those other classes. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Arnell. Anybody else like to address the board this evening? All right, I see none moving quickly, so I would say that we're done with that. Next meeting is October 12th at 7 p.m. This meeting's adjourned.